Hi everybody, it's me Liz with 143 Handmade, and today is the day I'm going to show you how I do my backing for my craziest quilts, or just how I've done it the last couple times. I'm sure it'll continue to evolve. It's one of those kind of things. I don't really like trying to cut such long fabric into strips, to make it the right width. So what I do is I just leave it the full width of the fabric, and I just make sure to cut it extra long. That is my sweetie girl that you just saw walk across frame. She's actually my oldest kitty. She's 13. And she's a little on the grumpy side, but she always has been. Anyways, so I just leave I buy my backing fabric by the bolt. I know that not everybody can do that, but I highly recommend it if you can at all find a way to do it. Save your money and then purchase the bolt. You can find some really good deals and sales and stuff on eBay and on Etsy. I got this particular bolt as a Christmas present last Christmas, and so this is a Moda, I think, black. And I just absolutely love it. It's high quality. It's really heavy and all of that stuff. So, but I buy my backing fabric by the bolt, and I usually buy 2, maybe 3 in a year. So it's not like it's a huge, we're not talking about thousands of dollars here. But I find it's just so much easier to have the entire bolt on hand as opposed to having to figure out how much I need and doing all the math. I don't like doing that part, so this is my way around that. I just buy my backing fabric by the bolt, and then now what I'm going to do is I have this all lined up, and I'm going to run it along here, and I'm just going to do a quick basting stitch, because this is just to tack this on so it doesn't get wrinkly or anything. It can hold everything. And then when I do the binding is when this edge will really get, bound in there. So I will be right back. Okay, and I'm back. So what I've done is I've basted these two together, right? And now this will lay a lot flatter. But my very next step is, you could go ahead and take your rows and just lay them down, no strips or anything like that, and just lay it down right sides together, like so, and sew down through all 3 layers, and that be your joint. I don't like to do that because there's so many there's so much bulk and whatnot in a lot of these joints, so I don't care for doing that. So what I do is I take my next row and I take one of my strips, just like when I joined the blocks together, very, very similar to that. So take one of my strips, and I'm just going to sew it along the top edge of each of my rows. Okay, and just like the crazy quilt, you can do this as planned or as crazy as you want. So I'll be right back after sewing this together, and I'll see you in just a second. Okay, now that I have those sewn on, I sewed a strip like this onto all of my rows. And so now what I do is I do put them right sides together and line them up. I don't worry about whether or not the lines cross exactly right, because some of them are slightly different widths, from the different kinds of straps, or not straps, strips, joining strips. So I really don't concern myself with whether or not they are precisely lined up. Okay, so now what I do is I go in and I line it up like this. Like I said, here's my strip that's sewn onto my blocks. Line that up, and I lay it all out really, really nice and flat, and I pin right in here to keep, so that way everything is nice and flat, and everything's good. And then I just take the pins out as I go, And let me see, let me go ahead and show that a little bit more precisely. And grab some pins instead of just telling you about it. So what I do is I just take it right along in here, making sure that my backing fabric, okay, making sure that my backing fabric and my first row are nice and flat. You know, there's not a lot of wrinkles underneath. This is not a great spot on my table to be doing this. Pull this up a little. There we go. Now we've got a good flat spot to work on this corner. And so I'll just show you on this corner what I do for the entire quilt. You know, and it does take some space. You know, I have a very large chest freezer in my workroom, and I have these magnetic bowls. And so what I do is, usually when I'm not trying to do it on camera, is I lay this out on the freezer and use the magnetic bowls to hold this, the bottom stuff down nice and flat. Okay. So now what we do is we take our strip, or our row I mean, and put it right like so, lining up our edges. And sometimes what I'll do if I know I've got it really messed up and really off is I will just cut one of my blocks, you know, at a random interval to make it so that way it will be offset, you know, the two rows there. But this time I think I got them pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and go with it. And I get this strip lined up. Okay, I get the rows lined up here on the edge really good. And then I line up this strip along here, nice and even, and I pin it. This is one of the few places that I use pins ever in any of my quilting. And this is just how I have found it to be easiest, because I don't have the budget to try out all the different like spray bastes and powder bastes and all that kind of stuff. Plus I'm afraid of the chemicals on a level, not like, you know, like badly, but I have a lot of sensitivities and allergies and stuff. Plus we have a lot of cats in the house, so I just haven't done any of those now. So, but that's what I'll do, and I'll just go down the entire row and get that pinned in really, really good. And then I just roll up this extra fabric, because it's just one layer of fabric, so it rolls up nice and small. And this is the piece that I feed through the machine, and all of this is laying out here on this side, on the outside. And I just stitch right in through here, through all of the layers, including the backing. So this is the actual first stitches that will be seen on the backing fabric. So you need to make sure at this point, whatever color threads you have are color threads you're totally okay with being on the other side. Let's see, I'm gonna go ahead and just leave it random. Whatever's in the machine is what it's gonna be, because this is a crazy quilt. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and get this row attached. Okay, so I thought that I should go ahead and show this actually on camera instead of just talking about it. So now I have it all pinned up, and I'm rolling up this edge, and then I'm going to slide it under the sewing machine. And I slide it in too far, and then I just set the presser foot down. I don't lower the needle, and that kind of helps hold that end in. And then I pull all of this over and into my lap. That way I'm supporting the weight, and I can feed it in, you know, loosely and just the way that I want. Okay, now I lift my presser foot back up and slide this down and get right here on this corner. And I do tend to leave my strips a little bit on the long side, and I go ahead and I start off of that. And that way, if I have any problems with the thread bunching or anything, you know, it'll be you know, in that bit that I can cut off. So, so yeah, here we go. I'll go ahead and just sew this down. I like to sew with a fairly wide, maybe not wide, but I don't, larger, a little bit generous of a 1/4 inch seam here. But it just depends on your own skill levels and the fabrics involved, how big of a seam allowance you need to take. But yeah, this is the position that I use. This is how I get everything to fit under. And I will just continue to do that back and forth, you know, laying the quilt out, pinning on the next row, and then sewing it on. And that way, because the strips are sewn onto the rows, you only have one row of stitching on the back. It cuts down on the stitching on the back, which I wasn't necessarily intending to do when I tried it this way, but I thought it looked really cool because you have all of these, you know, fancy stitches and everything all over the front of this crazy quilt, and yet on the back there's, you know, a handful of lines, and that's it. And I don't know, I just thought that was an interesting duality, you know, of a crazy quilt, to have the back be ultra simple. It's pure black and it only has a few lines on it. So that's what I did, and that's, you know, that's why I'm doing it this way, after having played with several different versions of this, you know. And it's just all about, you know, take your time, just do a few inches at a time, make sure everything stays laying flat, you know, feed everything in nice and slow. If you have a walking foot, now would be a good time to use it, or an auto feed function or anything like that, because you do have quite a few layers under there. Even though it's only one layer of the crazy quilt, you still have your backing fabric, you have the base, the foundation piece, you have all the crazy quilt pieces, and then you have the joining strip. So it's a minimum of 4 layers. And then also wherever, you know, the crazy quilt fabrics join, you have all of those layers, however many there are in those. And so, you know, you are going through a fair amount of layerage here, even though there's no batting. I do find that this happens when I don't use my walking foot. You'll see that this top part is kind of, you know, rolling up on me as though, you know, it's like the feed dogs are feeding a little bit faster than the top, and that's just normal. And I have found that it doesn't really get in the way if you go nice and slow. And I like to do it this way, where I literally just stitch a few inches, I reshuffle everything, take out one pin, you know, and that's it. And so, but go at your own pace, you know, that's what this is all about. It's just another method to have in your sewing kit, if you will, you know. And my main goal here is to inspire newer sewists into trying to make a quilt and not hold themselves to the standards, you know, of, you know, an established quilter. Just to show you what a beginner quilt actually looks like, how it looks like, or, you know, what it looks like when somebody who doesn't have a huge amount of skill does do a quilt. You know, it's still totally doable. I'm not selling myself short here. I'm just acknowledging the fact that I'm not a seamstress. You know, I have not spent a decade quilting. I have done, you know, less than 50 quilts in my time at this point. I have to figure out that number, because I want to be able to quote it to you guys. But it's not a huge number, is my point. And to where there's, you know, so I want to encourage you to just get started and let yourself be messy, let yourself make mistakes, let yourself find your way. And don't hold yourself up to the standards of those established quilters. you know, nobody doing anything on day one is going to do it as well as somebody who's done, you know, been doing that same task for a decade or more. So just be kind to yourself and let yourself have that beginner practice. So we're getting close here. We almost have this row done. So, and notice I do pull under and kind of, you know, straighten that out. Make sure that I don't have a big fold in there. But I found that this is so much easier, even though it's a little bit fiddly at the sewing machine, it's so much easier than any other basting method that I've tried. You know, I've tried the whole thing where I laid it all out and I used the bent safety pins and basted it together with the bent safety pins and tried to roll it up, and it did not turn out well. I actually still have that baby blanket and it is still partially finished and it's just in a box. And sometime I will pull it back out and finish it, I'm sure. But not today. But, you know, when it's the last thing in that project box of things that need to get finished, it will get finished because nothing else is going into that box. That particular box is a box that things can only come out of. And so, and that's one of the ways that I keep myself organized is I do, as an artist, I do tend to start a lot of projects and sometimes I don't always go back to them. And in order to deal with that in my sewing, because I did not want that to apply in my sewing world. And so what I do is I have an in progress project box, and I can have that much, you know, that much space of in projects. So if I have a bunch of small projects going on, you know, then obviously that box is, you know, I can hold a lot more. But if I have a couple of big projects taking up a lot of space, then, you know, that's all I have room for, kind of thing. And it helps keep me on track. And nothing, you know, once that box gets full, I don't get to start any new projects. If there's not room in the box, then I don't get to start any new projects, and I need to empty it. And so that's the phase that we're in, and so I am working on emptying that box out. So here we go. Okay, now I'm flipping it to where it's upside. It's gonna be upside down to us, but it's just easier to flip out that side than this side. Okay, and see, now we flip this back, and you can see that this is, both of these rows are now, you know, anchored to the backing fabric, and we've got this nice simple line of stitching on the back, and that'll be all that's on the back, and that will hold, you know, the backing fabric on good enough for me. If you want to add more stitch lines, then it is, you know, again, it's your quilt, do whatever you want. A great place to add them would be right here in the strips, you know, just going down the strips. But you can, you know, this would be a great way to practice your free motion quilting, anything you want, really. But yeah, so there we go. And then, you know, just like I did the last one, I will get it nice and laid out. And I will grab my strip, the next row. Okay. And I already sewed my strip on. And so I will just line that up, you know, really nice, pin it, sew it, and that's going to be it for today. The next video I will show you what I do when I get to the edge of the backing fabric, because this backing fabric is not as wide as my quilt's going to be. So yeah, that will be next week's video. Thank you so much for joining me, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it if you have made it all the way to the end. And, you know, regardless, I appreciate every single minute we spend together, and I can't wait to show you the next steps. Thank you for hanging out.